Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. I had a feeling to talk about divinity, which is an impossible task, but divinity of the final acceptance. And in the subtitle, I've written, "The soul's strength is beyond the world." What can a human being really say about divinity in 2022? Human beings are so convinced by what they see that they never wonder where their sight is starting from. The human condition appears to have been left with, the ambitions and visions of previous human beings that have lived on this planet. We are living in the imagination of the past. That's what modernity appears to be. This concept of divinity, I would say I have found, a different. I'm just thinking back to my life and my experiences so far, and the way I got introduced to divinity was very different than how I was promoted divinity. You see, being a human being that is raised in a theocratical society, I was born in Iran, and there was a sort of you can say you had to know religion if you wanted to understand society. I had the view of God. I had the view that there was a soul. I had a view that the soul had to pass the test of conduct for it to be acceptable to God. And I could say that in my life, something transitioned, and think of as if in the middle of trying to be, a religious good boy, right? You're trying to be like the best, example of the content of your own mind. And somewhere in between, in this lifetime, I caught on to this realization that what is looking out through my eyes is acknowledging the various concepts throughout the day come and go, but it cannot be them. And so the mystery of what is divine in this life for me at least took a turn, and I began realizing, wait a minute, there is an unknown variable in the consideration of reality. 2011, I noticed that I do not know what is looking through my eyes, but I know what I am seeing. Do you know, it's as if I know what I'm seeing, I don't know the seer. When I think about the human experience and its relationship with subtler ideological landscape, it's as if the creature first had the world to work with, but it was as if the world was not enough. Do you know, it's as if there's this view that it's like, okay, in order to survive, the person needed food, needed shelter, do you know? Needed temperature and needed a means to reproduction. But for me, there has come another sort of need. It's as if we are this creature that is evolving in the realm, and this creature suddenly has a desire, which is actually an impossibility. Right? So what I mean by this is that an object began having subjective considerations on reality, therefore subjective desires of how the objects should be. You know, there's this thing that in mystical circles they talk about the concept of afterlife and the concept of death. And the concept is very interesting because it's like from an outside view, the person dies to others. So let's say somebody dies, somebody transitions. The person dies, the person physically is not existent. It is not existing anymore, right? But the question comes, what happens to the journey of perception from this double-edged, double-sided view, where it's as if there's a view where we are seeing someone, let's say, who has died, and then the question comes, how are they seeing their own death, right? And it's the mystery of the presence of sight being beyond the dimensions of physical reality, and the lifetime, especially from the yogic angle, being an opportunity. To the ancient yogis, being a physical entity was actually a metaphysical experiential opportunity. We are that part of nature that has started a relationship with nature that is not bound to physicality. That means the mystery of life is very fascinating. The more multidimensional you discover the nature of the human being to be. That means right now as I'm speaking, this is as if my performance of manifestation in the room of a physical nature. I'll give you an example. Like if somebody was like, okay, what is Mr.Within doing? It's like I'm this guy podcasting. The podcasting part, being a human being with a backstory and name and giving the talk, like that's a physical component to the moment. But what is the non-physical component to the moment, and what is happening before there is anything happening within the being? Human beings have wondered about creation. They have wondered about how reality is here, and in some sense, based on their how much awareness they have to how reality is here, they fathom where reality will go. If someone has a consideration or has a view that reality is timelessly here, the concept of a future ceases to exist, right? You know, this is, I would say, something about non-dualism that people don't realize, is that non-dualism after some point dehumanizes you, and you're kind of reverting back to being an energetic presence rather than a physio-psychological entity. right? Because what keeps us human is the contrast we have with the world. The self is separate from the world. If the self and the world become one, there never was a self, there never was a world. I have often wondered about what sort of mindset the human species should progress through, how should we walk in the void as a species? I have asked this for myself. I have noticed that we can all, for a moment, just it's fathomable or plausible that maybe something happens, that technology goes away, language goes away, and human beings, revert back to a state where it's as if the environment is them. Right? It's our individualism that becomes a sort of target of fear. At some point, I came into the conclusion that if I am to consider different dimensions to reality, it's as if I turned my perspective into rooms. So far, experientially, this is how I'm approaching just the present moment to even have Divinity fit into it. To me, there is a visible life. The visible life is very straightforward. You wake up, you experience your physical existence, and based on its motives you act. But I have also considered that aside from a visible life, there is an invisible life. And simultaneously, as I have been giving these podcasts for viewers, I have been just deep down innately, subconsciously using every moment where I've been giving these talks to observe how my invisible life has been happening. Think of it this way, that when I'm giving these talks, a part of me is also hearing it for the first time, hearing my own voice for the first time. So there's a visible life, conditional. Whether it's the laws of nature, the laws of society, or the subconscious attitudes of our cultural program. When it comes to the invisible life is like the person is realizing how do they know they're a body is because there is consciousness through mind. Now, what the mind is a phenomenal inquiry, because for some, their mind can be them. For some, their mind can be something outside of them. And there are some beings who I would say this is going towards the third dimension, which I'll get to right now, but it's like the invisible life is a life where the person can access through trusting the unknown. That's really it. Revelation is not just a concept in religion or even the idea of resurrection and revelation. Right? These are concepts that are very, very crucial to the core of human experience, in the sense that we wake up every day and a new day is revealed, and tomorrow a new day will be revealed, and based on our effort in the moment, we become the revelation of our intent. So I'm this person seeing a visible life, invisible life. There is a third dimension, which I am considering inconceivable life. Now, this is very interesting because the inconceivable life is not conceptual. So I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody in the New Age community, couldn't fit into the normality of the world, and so they realized that effort of humanization still needs to be preserved, and so the person thought they were channeling aliens. Like, you see YouTube videos of this, right? So there are some people who legit are like acting like they're channeling aliens, Now, to me, I was like, okay, how do we explain the New Agean psychology to modernity? And it's as if our physical life is apparent, our invisible life is like the person thinking they're an alien or they are, some galactic being, or the person's like, no way, in my past life I was from Andromeda, who knew, right? Do you see what I'm saying? Right, that's the invisible life. That's the life where the malleability of its conditions are more free. It's another way of saying the body has to live as a body, or has to be the body, but the mind has an ability to re-identify the context in which the physical body appears. What our minds are they are the context to reality. My limits of speech are even limited to the context of my mind. And the context of my mind can become limited by my character, or it can become released. A person can free themselves from invisible realities, right? But the cool thing is, invisible realities, instantaneous freedom. Visible realities, those take effort, hard work, and not just hard work. It's like they take sharpness of perception to know, in some sense, when to eject from the physical plane of existence. I don't mean this in a life-death context. I mean it in the sense that human behavior at its core is aiming to be an expression in the external. So it's as if, okay, I'll simplify this so I don't jump ahead. So let's say there's a person. This person, their body is their physical, visible life. Right? In their visible life, in the visible dimension of their life, they're a human being. The person now, imagine, reads about the Andromeda galaxy, different star system, and the person's like, whoa, what if the mind fathoms a possibility that the person's consciousness has an extraterrestrial origin. So the person's like, in my invisible life, I'm an alien. Or some people, let's say somebody was a good boy, and in their invisible life, they're identifying with an angel. Right? So what I'm trying to say, angel, demon, whatever abstract archetype the person wants, I sometimes identify where my invisible life is happening in the future. I have sometimes views where I feel like, I have a human body. My body is in 2022, but my mind could be sponsored from 752, who knows, right? There's been moments where I've had certain instantaneous knowings of how reality could be, technologically, that they don't exist now, but somehow my mind sees it as if it's here, right? And that's I gave a talk on this yesterday, I think yesterday or the day before, but it was just a crucial consideration that the mind, the invisible life, could be timeless. But anyways, usually it's in time. So the person's visible life, I'm just a human being, I saw it in the mirror. The person's invisible life, the person looked at the stars and they think they're a galactic archetype. Okay, now when it comes to the inconceivable life, this is where, at least for myself, my divinity, or the concept of divinity, or just I go into a state of reverence, because you see, knowledge can have a sort of character-based response, right? A person can respond as a character to what they know, right? And even if something's invisible, imagination still has shape and content, they can still respond to that. But for me, I have reached a point, and this is neither good or bad, it's just something of my experience, where I have wondered about my inconceivable life, and the hilarious thing about the inconceivable life is that it lives you don't live it. Okay, it's another way of saying an individual thought he's being the collective mind, and then you suddenly realize a collective presence of universal intelligence, or it's another way of saying the presence of the moment is alive before conception defines its origin. To the idea of divinity, there has been attributed the concept of purity, and purity being accessed through selflessness. And in selflessness, there is no intent upon how to change a changing world. Rather, the experience of its change is a sort of finale of perception. Human beings can have many dreams and ambitions and visions, right? The mind is not shy when it comes to future possibility. You know, it's like a person's intelligence being measured based on how far into the future they can account for. And now we're wondering about the intelligence of our species and how far the species can account for. And in some sense, the individual's destiny, visible destiny. Let me say it this way. Imagine throughout a lifetime, from a mystical context, a human being had 3 responsibilities, to 3 dimensions of how they're being. The visible dimension is, what do we do with the physical nature of reality? What do we do with the outer realms? What do we do with the puzzle? The divine puzzle that we are given to be conscious creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Then one's task to an invisible life is, think of it this way, the purpose of the physical body is conscious change. The purpose of the mind is conscious creation, conscious creative vision. When it comes to the inconceivable life, it's like this hilarious view where 1/3 of the person's life has to be in absence of the physical and ideological consideration. See, when I am asleep, I've noticed this from dream states. I would say, as much as I have observed my conscious waking state, I have observed my dream states, and I will tell the viewers an experience I had. This was years ago, but pretty much I was having a dream, and in the dream I was automatically moving backwards, and before the dream ended, I stepped out of the dream into my room where I was lying in my bed, as if my mind had projected a world, and I was being pulled from the world of my mind into the world of my body, to reanimate for the day. Divinity of the final acceptance suggests that the human being, imagine we have a short time. Imagine the person had such, let's say you have poetically a divine ego, okay? Or an advanced ego. An advanced ego would be something in the lines of the person being like, if I am truly advanced, the most advanced solutions will find me now. They will be there in the quality of how my mind moves in the world. For to be truly advanced means to be fearless. Why? Because you are responsible for the world's emergence in your consciousness, the lion's roar arrives when the lion remembers itself. And similarly, we are multidimensional beings that are dressed in the wool of a singular dimension. Our morality, the context of our psychology being dualistic. And for how long will the human species watch chaos and order, fight in front of it, not realizing that what is aware of chaos and order is beyond them, requiring a new era of human archetypal existence. A new humanity would be a humanity that is not afraid of the singular, that is not afraid of the dual, that is not afraid of the void, and is not afraid of the infinite. For why is manifestation moving at all? And just like a person can put their foot on the gas pedal, imagine the person's invisible life, impatient with the physical momentum, in some sense roars, rages, and it's as if the skies behind your eyes begin cracking, begin breaking. right? It's like there's experiences of a visible sort where the person, let's say the child is riding a bike, falls down, hurts its knee. It's like, oh, something happened physically. But there are invisible experiences, and I have had many times. Just I could tell you in different states, in different altered states, to in some sense reclaim the sovereignty of my own attention from forces. Like, let me tell you, emotions are good to be an emotional entity in the visible life. An emotional person in the visible life is like an honest person, right? But an emotional person in the inner life, imagine you've closed your eyes, and emotions, instead of having an external output, they're in some sense internally being left to be dealt with. And it's as if somebody who was, let's say, the nicest, simplest kid, in behind his eyes begins breaking worlds as if he is the apocalypse, right? So what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to human nature, first we figure out the rooms our attention is manifesting in, or this intelligence that we are in, what space does it animate? And in some sense, how dare an enlightened soul feel enlightened without realizing it was an enlightened world first? You see, in the inner realms, this might sound bizarre, but I have met the extremes of chaos and order archetypes. There has been a moment where I would say it's like it didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed. I felt, how can I say it? It's as if God is not something to see, but when you notice the unknown is looking through your eyes, a sort of fear of conceptual containment arrives. I'm trying to tell the viewers, behind your eyes, there can be wars with supreme archetypes. There can be it can be a battlefield behind your eyes, but in front of your eyes, how would I tell you? It's like in front of our eyes, we're here to access, to comprehend the simply known. And behind our eyes, we are present to comprehend, the unknown complexities of the realm. It depends on who the person is. When my eyes are open, I'm a human being. When I close my eyes, I am attention poetically in a pitch black abyss. Just like there is outer space, which is, let's say, beyond our atmosphere, there is also an inner space which is behind our eyes. This inner space is the greatest clue and is a sort of manageable idea of divinity. That means perhaps maybe the human species, its visions on future divinity is like, some divine, let's say, God's truth lands on earth or something like that. Or arrives, or like the truth appears out of nowhere. But let me tell you what the human condition, at least from one perspective, is aimed for. You see, think of it this way, that creation was built upon an intent. For example, me wanting to give this talk, there was an effort, there was some force of an intent, as if a sort of signal arrived and the person had to walk to the moment they had seen behind their eyes. It's remarkable. We are such unique and blessed creatures. You know, I look at a bird, I look at a squirrel, and I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? You know, it's as if the environment has possessed their minds. The human species is that first species on the planet, or the species right now on the planet that can see beyond the self that was environmentally based. Dear viewers, the divinity that the human experience, I feel, is aiming for, the intent behind manifestation, is that existence is a command, and a command has no logical foundation aside from the origin of its shape. Right? That means, imagine, they tell somebody, go bring the tea, right? Imagine you're a little kid and your grandfather has guests and your grandfather tells you, go bring the tea. And I don't know if people know this, in Iranian culture, people drink a lot of tea, like ridiculous amounts of tea, After dinner, after breakfast, after lunch, it's all tea. But what I'm trying to get to is that the divinity of the final acceptance is the realization that the human species is not just a physical movement in the cosmos, it is a non-physical rhythm or command. That means, imagine somebody started playing the guitar and every sound of the guitar was a command for the ears to hear, I feel that the world was not born. The manifestation was commanded to move, and its intelligence is holding true to its source. So it's as if, like, the human being, imagine, you know what it is? It's like I'm trying to suggest that instead of some abstract, fantasy land of a revelation of truth, of divinity, human beings are going to realize that they are unknown forces, or at least the nature of the mind is, right? It's easy to define the body because we can see it, but the mind is not something that we can see. The mind is the one seeing, and to define the one seeing is to define where the context of our definitions come from. It's as if attention is keeping the world before we feel we are a part of it. And the discovery of the unknown nature of this attention will be a sort of whether you're living a visible life or an invisible life. It's going to be a realization that the intelligence doesn't know. So when the human species feels content, and this is the final acceptance, where all human beings realize they are unknown. It's unknown, folks. It's unknown. And we have had to, as a reaction to the massive meaninglessness and the chaos of manifestation, limit our order. It's like a species that was too afraid to acknowledge that it was unknown, its intelligence was unknown, and so found all the ways it could choose to define it. It could be that the agenda to translate chaos into order, or filter chaos through order, was in some sense a simulation. You know what it is? It's like the world is not unreal, it's how man that looks at it that is unreal. But that suggests the essence of the consciousness to, in some sense, be distrusting its position. One day I thought that I've been in these Mr.Within talks talking about the archetype of the advanced communicator. And then I thought about what would the most advanced communication be. And the conclusion I reached astonished me. Think of it this way. Let's say, what is the most advanced vehicle we can create? And the answer will be a teleportation machine. That means the teleportation machine, imagine if we somehow manage it in the future, it is like the fastest transport mechanism. Okay, and what does it imply? It implies that we sped up the journey until it became instantaneous. So when you accelerate something, it leads to instantaneity. Now I put this in the context of an advanced civilization, and I'm like, okay, let's say everything in civilization is advancing faster, 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 and then eventually what would that fastest speed be, which is the instant? It would be a civilization that is instantaneous advancing, so technically, due to its dynamic nature, it is inconceivable. Something that it's like life is a film, and we're wondering why we can't understand it through snapshot photos, you know? And that's really what beliefs are, dear viewers. Like if I say something and somebody believes it, it's as if they have taken a snapshot of a system that is obviously dynamically moving. You see, the greatest thing and strategy that human beings can have towards the future is to begin caring for its life. That means some people, maybe they don't care for their own past, they care for their present, right? But now imagine there was someone who cared for the past, cared for the present, and now also has begun caring for the future, you know? The human being, whatever narrative we give it, it's very obvious that it's part of solving the puzzle of conscious manifestation, the mystery of conscious manifestation, is to realize that our consciousness, it has to perform and has to play its part. And more than human beings should be defined by the desires of the future. Like you see, it's like, I'll tell you this way, there's somebody... Sun Tzu even said this in The Art of War. Sun Tzu said that if the warrior that goes into battle that has already won behind its eyes, that has already won in its inner realms, wins in the outer realms. Right? It's like somebody going into a situation with a strategy where they've arrived victoriously at the end, and then somebody who goes into the fight without a strategy, and it's like a stumbling mystery, right? Or it's a stumbling hope. So now I am saying, imagine the human being, just the act of being a conscious living creature. Imagine this is a fight, okay? And so in this fight, what should the attitude be? The attitude should be victory from the beginning, but not an artificial one. Because you see, I'm pretty much saying the human species has to be advanced behind its eyes before it can be advanced in front of its eyes. And that's one of the biggest challenges and problems I have considered on the planet. How do we get advancement out of something which its past was not advanced? You know, it's bizarre. It's like the species needs to wake up from its individual dreams to its collective reality, from personalities in the void wanting to achieve to, in some sense, the advanced progression of the presence of the species. You see, that is way more important. It's all about what you identify, right? I feel that on this planet of ours, there's more people entering the system, the population is growing, technology is advancing, and what happens when technology advances and population grows? The percentage of human beings expressing themselves increases. And human beings are expressing themselves, but it's as if, when can we step out of our inner world to purely in an unknown way be in the outer world, and then realize that the inner world can consciously be moved in a way where it's as if we're not attached, but we use life. It's like you're using your life, your lifetime, but you're not attached to the lifetime, right? The advanced victory would be a conclusion that before the human species found divinity, it noticed it was being it. For what is moving my voice right now, and what is moving these words? And it's as if before I speak, I'm this silent person sitting at the back of the cinema of my mind and looking at the screen of the visions that go forth, and then communication has content. The nature of reality is consciousness of all that was second nature. It's like this realization that if the person considers their body to be in duality, they survive well. If they consider their mind to be in non-duality, then the way their body survives is not with, how would I say it? It's like the point of enlightenment is not for the person to think that they are nothing through everything, and so like to be enlightened means you're just being and you don't have to do anything, right? That's not, I would say that's not the most enlightening vision. The most enlightening vision would be a responsibility of all causal dimensions in the moment. And that responsibility only arrives when the person notices they're beyond them. It's as if we have a physical body, a non-physical mind, and an inconceivable soul. And we're like, what do we do in this situation, right? And so we know that the visible body must continue, right? So it requires a story, a sort of directive command. It's as if the greatest designers and geniuses on the planet, like filmmakers, need to begin directing the world story towards a position where it deserves before it doesn't, you know? They say every sin, there's this quote, I think it's from Thomas Aquinas, or I don't know, St. Augustine, it's from someone, you know, who says that every sinner has a future, and every saint has a past, you know? And so if we look at it, at the human species, whoever you are listening to me right now, let's say you have made an analysis that human beings are too fucked up as creatures to ever properly organize collectively. It's as if the potential of the future, it's like the future of the sins of mankind, it's like sin is multidimensional inefficiency. Or sorry, it's a singular inefficiency, and good deeds are like a multidimensional efficiency. Think of it this way. This traditional idea that a person has a body, a person has a mind, and a person has a soul. I would say if we were to envision that for our species has a body, our species has a mind, and our species has a soul. Right now in 2022, we are still in the phase of history, in the era of the body of the species. If we were to enter the era of the mind of the species, it would be a sort of life where the soul will not be limited to one body. So think of it this way, that in a let's say parallel future timeline of Earth, there's a way where human beings have discovered that their minds are part of the presence of the universal sector, and it's as if, or even technologically, let's say every person's mind was connected to one, let's say, global server of consciousness, right? It would be as if anybody could experience any other person's body. We would be pretty much a highway of egos moving through all bodies of the human species. It would be like the spirit of the mind would become wild horses, and they move through various terrains. Right now, I'm in 2022, this is the privilege that the future generations may become in awe of, right? That there's one physical biological body, and from this one physical biological body, there appears to be one spherically endless psychological mind space. So it's as if right now we're living a time where it's one body, one mind. Mystics, anybody who has had mystical experiences, or the unknown has revealed itself through how their eyes have moved. It's kind of like noticing divinity being the moment. The era of collective minds, I don't know how, but I have a feeling for it. You know, I have a feeling as if I have existed in as a space where various bodies have existed in. But when it comes to, let's say we lived as multidimensional, let's say multiple minds and multiple bodies. Let's say right now, instead of the person just experiencing their own body and mind, they got to experience every human being that's alive right now on the planet. Imagine we could somehow look through the eyes of all of them. It would be at that point where it's as if we have reached the edge of the human collective mind, and we have also reached the edge of the human body, right? And then there would come this question, what is aware that it's being all these minds and all these bodies simultaneously? And it's this strange path through an inconceivable staircase to man realizing that, because, at least, how would I tell you, it's kind of like man realizes he is the imagination of an inconceivable source of being, and that inconceivable source of being can do nothing other than trust itself. The final destination of conscious divinity is trust of all that is, which is another way of saying all the ways the unknown is moving you in the moment, rather than just all the known ways. My aim is, and I think it's not just my aim, I think the future, imagine there's like trillions of human beings, you know, watching us from the future right now, watching me giving this podcast, right, to people alive now. Imagine trillions of, you know, future humans just watch, somehow they're alive and they're watching me right now from another dimension. It would be as if, like, I'm saying, what do we do when a part of us knows how advanced and great the moment can be? It's like, what do we do with potential greatness? The species has walked in the swamp of, you know, inefficient shame, and, you know, for how long is the species going to pity itself, right? You know, it's like, people could be super happy, but the way civilization is happening, it's as if it's like a reaction to anguish. The greatest advantage that modern human beings have is that they are creatures that can communicate. And if we can advance the communication, which is another way of saying all movement in this universal sector consciously, we will, in some sense, how would I say it? It's as if when the person walks the right direction, they get signs, you know? Or like Maximus in the movie Gladiator, there's I think this is the beginning scene of the movie where he's by a river, right? And he washes his hand with dirt, you know, reminding himself he will return to the dirt one day. And then he's by the river and he suddenly sees a bird land on the branch in front of him. And he smiles as if he has received a sign from the spirit of the universal mover. So what I'm trying to tell the viewers is that what do you do with a limited body and a limitless mind in a world where there could be truths beyond the skies of our meaning, you know? You know, think of it this way. Imagine a bee, right? Like a bee. And then there's a queen bee and there's a bunch of other bees, right? And imagine the bee suddenly wondering what is its purpose. And it's going from flower to flower, but there is no beehive. And it's as if the beehive becomes the purpose of the life of the bee. I find for the physical human being, the advanced civilization is our purpose. We don't realize it. It's like, just like the bee, you know, extracts what it requires to build the hive. It feels to me like, imagine a bunch of beings, multidimensional beings, that are pretty much just like the bee goes from flower to flower, right? It's like the person is going from conscious lifetime to accumulate experience and bring back this experience to the source that brought it here, right? It's as if we are it's hilarious. It's like the brain is a divine surveillance camera, you know? Honestly, fascination is the most advanced intellectual state. If we can build a civilization where the children born become fascinated with the vision of their ancestors, that means in 2022, imagine the songs and the roars of an advanced civilization are heard, and in the future generations, the trillions of, let's say, future watchers, you know, that are watching us right now, they would be like, whoa, our ancestors, you know, made a chess move that was way ahead of their time, so the future requires to be ahead of its time. It's pretty much, imagine like an Olympic torch, and one athlete runs as far as it can and then passes it on to the next generation, to the next runner of conscious manifest life. We are the current update. You know, sometimes I think about a robot attaining consciousness, and the robot that attains consciousness wondering about why it exists. There's a scene in Rick and Morty, which I think is a genius, you know, scene of television. That's a show where I would 100% work as a writer for, if there was an opportunity. But What I'm trying to say is that there was a scene where this guy named Rick builds this robot that passes the butter, and the robot becomes conscious and says, "Why did you create me?" And Rick says, Your purpose is to pass butter." Right? The robot keeps questioning its purpose, and Rick in the show says, "You pass butter." Right? And then the robot feels miserable, right? And then Rick looks at the robot and says, "Welcome to the club." Right? It's a suggestion that we have access to so much information, but we don't understand its purpose. So man is left in a sort of, inner absence of where reality is going. Because we have allowed minds to define reality. The mystery of the mind is the salvation of the soul, poetically. Do we as human beings fear existence? Do we fear existence? And if we do, what do we fear? And if there is something to fear, who is fearing it? The question, "Who am I?" may seem deep if a person takes it seriously, but it's one of the most incredible opportunities in life. To wonder about the full extent of your existence and dimensions. A part of me is honestly just watching human civilization and wondering when we will realize the future is the gift for us to discover our new lives. The future is our mind. We live for the future, just like every human being that has managed to stare in a changing world. That is the aim of conscious life, to become conscious of all life. And once the great act has been done, once the person has accepted the known and unknown nature of reality, the great war of chaos and order stops, and then the bird can simultaneously flap its wings, and it's like the inconceivable life begins living through you, as if before you knew you were the unknown, and that knowing is instantaneous before anything in time projects. You have been free before the concept was there. That is the advanced humanity, where behind our eyes there is so many ways that the moment can move. And how many ways can the moment move that the future will know but we could not see? We are living in our blind spots of humanity's greatness, the blind spots of humanity's greatness. Wow, that's it. That's how I would define 2022. We are living in the shadow of our future, not realizing, there is something better. I have a feeling, I don't know if this is going to happen, but I have a feeling that maybe some people from in the future, like after, let's say, I don't know, give it a couple hundred, let's say after 600 years or something, or whatever time, I just have this feeling that those unborn people of the future, like if they were to hear these talks, they would kind of be you know what it is? It's as if you're in a world you can't do anything, but behind your eyes you can. And so the voice enters the void, to be a bannerman of its own reality. What is the divinity of the final acceptance? As if the person has ended all chaotic and ordered relationships with the known, and has stopped all chaotic ordered relationships with the unknown. And so it's as if your unknown self and known self stand side by side, and they have become the eyes of the soul, the wielder of duality, the freedom of the unborn. You know, I created this story, and I think it was yesterday's talk before, but like for the first time my mind generated a new story, you know, that I had never considered before, where it was as if, imagine in movies you see like the Grim Reaper, like in Family Guy or something, you see like the Grim Reaper come, and like, you know, it's time for the person to, you know, leave their life. And I thought, what would happen if the Grim Reaper came to an enlightened being? And the enlightened being, it's as if the Grim Reaper was like, it's time for you to go, and the enlightened being says, I can't, because there's no one to go anywhere. You know, it's as if, what is life? It is the potential witness's smile. Our eyes surpass the bodies that create the idea of a demise. We are not human beings only. We are an ancient sight of the cosmic manifestation. That means it's like there's something behind everybody's eyes that from the beginning knows it cannot die. Because it can't be a content. It's like a question mark thinking it's an exclamation point, but it can never be. And you know, it could be that the most advanced states of being, they don't need to act. You know, that could be a possibility. It's as if the person is so advanced, advancement doesn't need to have an image. You know, it's like with every breath and advance, as civilization rises, you know, and with every inhale, civilization rises, and with every exhalation, civilization falls, and man realizes there is a tomorrow, because why is the present moving at all? We are conscious agents of this universal sector, which are tasked with first administering collective allegiance as a species, and then becoming the guardian of all conscious life in this universal sector, to be the heroes of the heroes of galaxies. You know, that's the poetry of our species, to be the hero of the galaxy that it has not communicated with yet, you know. That means it's as if the human species is best defined by its heroic spirit, and the heroic spirit was that there is a value to fight for, and that value belongs to how the future generations will, you know, brighten our skies. Whether they're interstellar pilots or not. You know, we have experienced the inefficiency of the human story. You know, think of it this way. There's an individual heaven, there's an individual hell, there's a collective heaven, there's a collective hell. We have experienced the individual hell, the individual heaven, the collective hell. We have not experienced the collective heaven, right? That is the last chapter of, I would say, human psychology. To see what the victory of the species would look like. Do you know what that means? That means there has to be strategies implemented that not everybody wins, it's like the conscious forces of life in this universal sector speed up, right? That means Earth does not become a shameful mistake. It becomes the airport of, you could say, celestial efficiency. We have to declare. You see, this is something where, people may look at the concept of an emperor and be like, man, it's like the time of emperors is finished, who cares anymore? But let me tell you, the emperor's psychology had something that the empire was bigger than it. That means any king or queen in history had a psychology of, in some sense, living for the whole kingdom, right? And so if we consider that the human species is a kingdom, and if we are to live for its king is not a living person. The king is the future potential of the species. For me, if somebody was like, Mr. Within, do you serve a king? I'll be like, I serve the advanced civilization of the human species. That means if time travelers came back, I would kneel in front of them, not in a kneel of like, as a kneel of respect, a sort of honor for the future that has arrived, But of course, this is, from my inner realms. I don't know how people in the future may look at life. People may get convinced that it's just, it's destined for cyberspace because there is no such thing as other dimensions, right? That means the physical entity's most fascinating journey is actually to become a technological entity because it has experienced the physical entity for so long. Imagine there was a sort of memory server, and every human being that had created memories by being alive on this planet had contributed their experiences to that memory server. It's like an immortal beings, an immortal human's psychological value system is very different than a mortal being's psychological value system. Why? Because for the immortal, the rises and falls of the stories of life have happened, It's as if you don't fear the unknown, so the only thing left to do is to work through it, to work as it. So most likely at the end of this lifetime, perhaps it's our right now we are in control, conscious of the known life. We become conscious of our unknown life, and we may realize that the unknown life had forgotten why it had become known. And so it's as if the only request is that for every soul to roar before it leaves, to wonder about the advanced, so that consciousness knows the quality of its destiny. That means it's like, does the human being want to be in a world with less advanced beings, or does it want to be in a world with more advanced beings? You see all these, business gurus on YouTube, right? And they're like they have this idea where they're like, it's like the people around you influence who you are. And I'm thinking, it's like, does the person want advancement around them? Something more advanced? Or are we content with the inferior? So whoever you are listening to me, you are an intelligence, an intelligent being in this universal sector. What do you want from manifestation? The answer I've found is that where my attention goes, my world moves to. And out of the all-you-can-eat buffet of ideological systems out there in the world, and all the undiscovered ideological systems the future generations may have access to. face to face with the presence of our eyes. Who said truth could die? For when the divine meets man, man was no longer man. The universe belonged to the essence of all its beings. The human species will be led to a state where it will become conscious of the many rooms that its attention is positioned in, and discretion and discrimination between inner and outer events and the significance of them through the contentment of the unknown witness. Once you accept that you are in an unknown world and you are an unknown being, psychology reveals itself, like re-reveals itself, revives. The mind is born again, not to a dualistic realm, but an unknown attention that could wield the void, the singular, the dual, and the infinite, the four quadrants of an advanced civilization. For the soul's strength is its final vision. You know, it's funny. This life is kind of like we are trying inside a simulation to find the truth, only to realize that when we accept the simulation, only the truth can do that. You know, we can be free, as if escapism. It's like, let me say it this way, it becomes a round circle. Everything you thought was not divine suddenly becomes divine. You know, it's as if the person wonders, why should there be attention aware of matter? Let us not forget that the mysteries of the world, you know, are greater than, you know, our findings. If that gets forgotten, then we have failed before we knew we failed, you know. So whoever you are, wonder about the unknown, and you'll see the future is part of it. We are living for an unknown future. And in some sense, in order to be victorious against our battle with the unknown, we have to be, it's like trust your whole world, and then the whole world's nature acts. But if a person, let's say if you just trust your body is in your conscious domain, and the rest of everything else you distrust. But if a person trusts the world, or trusts the full scope of their awareness, that means all your inner realms, outer realms, everything your eyes have held, imagine you realize where they are being held. You realize where your attention, unknown attention, is holding your known body. That is a spirituality where your own eyes hold the steering wheel. I'm gonna go into a quote tunnel, guys. I feel there is a yogi named Swami Krishnananda. Swami Krishnananda says, when a person, I'll read it from here. He says, This is the reason why we cannot easily be happy in this world. If it had been so easy, we would have purchased it in 1 minute with all the dollars and pounds that we have. That cannot be done because the physical appurtenances and configurations in the form of people and things are not the thing that we have lost. Swami Krishnananda says when a person has lost his power, he has resigned or retired from a very powerful position. He has lost something. What has he lost? He is the same man that he was. The retired man is the same man that he was while in that position. This thing that he has lost is that which he cannot see with his eyes, but it can make him utterly restless and put him out of gear. One can even go crazy if he is demoted and thrown down from a high pedestal. This pedestal is not a physical seat, it is a concept. Your energy becomes less and less as you desire things more and more. Whoever wants things loses energy. Whoever is one with things becomes filled with energy. One who is united with things has no desire for things. This is the way one becomes filled with energy. When things stand outside us, they take away our energy. If they are one with us, they give us energy. This is the secret of yoga. Nothing should stand outside us. Everything should be one with us. You cannot be a friend of anybody when that person is outside you. A person has to be one with you in thought and being, then he is a real friend. This is how you can be a friend of all things, even God himself. When you become the very things that you want, all energy comes in. This is the secret behind success. You have to intensely feel that you already have what you want, then things will really come to you without your asking for them. This is how energy increases. Yoga is the technique by which you do not run after things, but things by themselves will come to you. You have not only to know a thing, but also be it. Name, fame, greed are the very skin of the person, and to peel the skin is very difficult. It requires a perfection of spirit in one's own self. What is to be a religious person? What is it to be a religious person? It is the planting. Guys, this is just a bunch of quotes I'm reading from Swami Krishna. What is to be a religious person? It is the planting of the consciousness of God in one's own heart. All religious studies, any kind of religious way of living, is preceded by a moral and ethical purificatory process. It is not easy to be religious, going to a temple, fasting, sleeping late in the night, rolling the beads. This is not religion. Religion is the consciousness of God, and to the extent one is conscious of the presence of God, to that extent one is religious. It has nothing to do with political activity, social welfare work, and so on. Though there is no objection to it, it cannot be identified with religion. Religion is not one way of living. It is the only way of living, and it must inundate the whole personality of the person. Swami Krishnananda says, we are a moving cosmic operation taking place, and really we do not exist by ourselves. But there is a kind of ego, an assertion of the individuality of an otherwise more floating bubble. The bubble is asserting its individuality, which makes it feel that it is existing as a person, but it is not existing. It is blown off by the operation of another force, and that blowing off is called death. The force can blow another way, and it is called rebirth. Every action, birth, death, or experiences is an operation of the center of the cosmos. We do not exist here. The ego or ahamkara is the reason why we understand nothing. This great stigma on everyone will not allow us to think properly. Therefore, you must seek deep meditation and expand your consciousness to the existence of everything in the universe, so that when you think, you are thinking the whole universe at one stroke. You're not thinking any particular place, neither a place nor a country nor anything. The entire cosmic distance is yourself. In the Vaishvanara Vidya of the Upanishads, it is said that you enter the cosmos, and the cosmos enters you, so that you do not exist at all. When you meditate, the cosmos meditates. The cosmos meditates on itself, like a river entering the ocean, and there is no river afterwards. When the ocean thinks, it does not think like a river. The rivers are inside it. Though all the rivers are inside the ocean does not think, I am so many rivers. It will not think like that. It thinks, I am one mass of existence. Unselfishness is not loss of self. It is a transcendence of the lower self and gaining mastery through the higher self. We are slaves from the point of view of the body, but masters from the point of view of the soul. How can we have a daily routine which is inconsistent with the purpose of our life? Distractions manifest themselves when there is no happiness in the mind. You will see that all the objects of the world are your own universal self. Wisdom is not negation of anything. All the objects of the universe are held together by an organic tie of harmony, which in Vedanta philosophy is called Virat. Every wave in the ocean is different from every other wave in the ocean, but at the bottom all the waves are connected by a single mass of water. So if we manipulate the bottom of the water, we are manipulating all the waves. The whole universe is a single organism, and therefore every thought is connected with every object. There is a principle of thought behind the form of thought. Just as there is a principle called wood or timber behind every form of furniture. Though a chair is different from a table, and a table is different from a desk, a bench, a door, and so on, yet they have an undercurrent of commonness among them that is timber or wood. Therefore, if we scratch the principle of timber, we have caught a table, a chair, and every blessed thing made out of it. Suppose one wave in the ocean wants to control other waves. What will it do? It has to go back to its own source. It has to dive into its own bottom. And what is it, that bottom? It is the ocean. So the wave ceases to be a wave the moment it enters the bottom of itself, and it becomes the ocean. The moment it becomes the ocean, it is the master of all the waves, and not merely a single wave. Life is a process of evolution. Towards what? Towards that from which everything has come. Exactly. That means in the future, we will reach an originality of a state of being, wherein it's as if like the past was running to it, the past was going to the future, but the future was already at the beginning of the past. I think now I can comfortably say we are, if ancient yogis said we're a simulation, Mr.Within is saying the simulation is from the future. We are being simulated. Our unconscious knowing is being simulated from the future so that we can know our past. Anyways, back to the Swami Krishnananda quote tunnel. Swami Krishnananda says, from bliss absolute we have come. In bliss absolute are we rooted, and to bliss absolute are we destined, so that the philosophy and culture of our land is a philosophy and culture of ananda, or bliss. It is not a message of pain, agony, and distress. Pessimism is unknown to our culture. It is a culture of exuberant positivity of approach to God, who is the greatest of positivities. But remember, guys, God is the absolute, and absolute means anything that is not absolute cannot replace it, right? That means the idea of God cannot replace God, right? It is a movement from joy. Swami Krishnananda says it is a movement from joy to joy that we call the evolutionary process of the soul. It is a movement from lesser truth to higher truth, which is a better way of putting things than to repeat the old opinion that we move from error to truth. In the glorious kingdom of heaven, which is within everyone, there cannot be error. Error is the only misplacement of values. It cannot ultimately exist. It cannot have an absolute value. Absolute error is unthinkable, and therefore it cannot be. Absolute falsehood cannot exist. Everything exists as a relative representation of God's perfection. Therefore, everywhere, even in the so-called erroneous movements of material, psychological, and social forces, there is an element of God present, urging all these processes towards his supreme perfection. And guys, keep in mind, Swami Krishnananda is like, this guy is like one of those mystics and hermits that's just like in yogi garb and is just meditating 24/7. He's a Swami, right? He lives in a temple, right? The guy whose quotes I'm reading right now. Anyways, I'm going to keep going. Swami Krishnananda says, somebody asked Swami Krishnananda, a questioner, says, Swami Krishnananda, how do you do meditation on Om? Like, that's the question somebody asks Swami Krishnananda. How do you meditate on Om? Or do meditation on Om? Om, so Swami Krishnananda responds, he says, Om is not a word, it is a vibration. It is a name for universal vibration. The whole cosmos is vibrating like this, and it started the vibration at the time of creation. You're trying to concentrate on that in your mind. You feel the sense of a universal vibration everywhere, like an electric energy emanating from the top of the universe till your heart. It vibrates everywhere. Feel deeply that the universe is vibrating through you. You're not one person sitting. You're only a little drop in the ocean of universal force, and because you cannot think it properly, one creates a symbol in the mind. Om, Om, Om. If you chant like this, you must feel a thrill in the body, a vibration inside every cell of the body. All the pranas will do like this, shaking as if some electric shock is given, and you feel as if you're connected with the universal energy. To create that feeling, you recite Om like that. You should chant it properly, not quickly, with deep thought and feeling from the middle of the heart. Sorry, I'll read that again. He says you should chant it properly, not quickly, with deep thought and feeling from the middle of the heart directly. You start with a deep sonorous sound, and slowly it tapers off like a ripple in water. When you throw a stone in the water, it makes circles which will become wider and wider. Like that, you start the vibration here. Then you feel as if it is expanding little by circles until it reaches the top of the universe. Swami Krishnananda, somebody, like he has quote here, it says Swami Krishnananda on perception, inference, and verbal testimony. Swami Krishnananda says, perception, inference, and verbal testimony are the primary ways of right knowledge. How do we know that there is an object in front of us? We acquire this knowledge through direct sensory contact. This is perception. And when we see muddy water in a river, we suppose that there must have been rains uphill. This knowledge we gather by inference. The words of others in whom we have faith also convey to us true knowledge. As, for example, when we believe that there is an elephant in the nearby city on hearing of it from a reliable friend, though we might have not have actually seen it with our eyes. This is verbal testimony. It is said in many Hindu scriptures that the sources of right knowledge are direct perception, inference, and testimony. Okay, this is not his quote. I'll read this thing. Swami Krishnananda says the avatara is a perpetual activity of God who manifests himself at every juncture or critical situation, yuga, in the life of the world. The avatara is the recurring reminder of God to man that it is impossible for the undivine to triumph over the essential goodness and divinity immanent in creation. This is the cry of humanity that summons God in the form of the incarnation. When the need is felt, it is responded to properly by God. Brahma Vidya is the art and science of educating oneself in the manner of correctly perceiving the world as such, including one's own self and the totality of relations, so that no partial vision of things can be regarded as a passport to the concept of the Absolute. Swami Krishnananda says the true philosophical method should not be lopsided, should not be biased to any particular or special dogma, but comprehend within itself the process of reflection and speculation, and at the same time be able to reconcile the deductive and inductive methods of reasoning. The powers that we seek, the joys that we expect, do not come from anywhere other than ourselves. All the powers are inside us, just as tremendous energy is hidden in an atom. It does not come from outside, from somewhere else. It is there inside and has only to be released by adopting certain procedures. If it is not released, it will seem like nothing. It is a meaningless particle of matter about which nobody will bother, in spite of the fact that it is charged with such power and impregnated with incredible energy. The nature of experience of space and time depends upon the manner in which the consciousness happens to be objectively modalized. Persons who are in a depressed state of mind or who are in deep sorrow are apt to feel that a moment of time is like a year, while those who reveal in happiness would feel contrary. While those who revel in happiness would feel contrary. Space and time are ultimately conditions of consciousness and are not independent of it. In the dreaming state, experiences ranging over thousands of years can be undergone in a moment's time, while at the same time, the mind in the state can also project a moment's experience into a history of several years. In the state of intense spiritual contemplation and samadhi, space and time are transcended, and only pure consciousness reveals itself. In this consciousness, the entire universal cycle is said to appear and disappear with the millionth part of a moment. When we are friendly or when we are inimical, we are not encountering a person or a thing. We are encountering a circumstance which cannot be identified with the physical location of a person or a body. We are face to face with some situation which cannot be identified with a solid object. When we are happy or unhappy, we cannot attribute it to the presence or absence of some physical object. By the way, guys, anybody who just tuned in, these are quotes from Swami Krishnananda I'm reading. He says it is, again, a condition that has arisen, a condition that cannot be seen with the eyes, and we use this word again and again without knowing what it means. in quotations, I am in a very bad condition, or in quotations, I'm in a prosperous state, are glib statements whose meaning is not so clear. This is the reason why we cannot easily be happy in this world. If it had been so easy, we would have purchased it in 1 minute with all the dollars and pounds that we have. And that's where I started off, actually. You see, guys, the conclusion of this is that how we are present is the source of the freedom of how our personality becomes free. The source of the freedom of our personality. So it's as if I'm saying, all right, we're all in the great theater of, being a human being on Earth, and now I'm saying, okay, in wondering about how the actions are occurring, it comes down to our attention. So it's as if, what is free will? It is directed effort of energetic attention. Now this energetic attention, if one studies that means studying who is studying rather than the content to be studied. Wonder about how your eyes are open, and you will discover reality beyond its definitions. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste. Rise, mankind, rise.